Commander Vex of the Galactic Union stood in the command center of Prosperity Hub, staring at a screen that was essentially screaming at him in 15 different colors, none of them good. The reactor status display had gone from its usual calm blue to what could only be described as apocalyptic red, with occasional flashes of orange that somehow made everything worse. "Explain this to me one more time, Kelton," Vex said, his three-fingered hand massaging the ridge above his eyes where a headache was forming. Slowly. Chief Engineer Kelton, a Threnian whose species prided themselves on their technical prowess, looked like he might cry. His normally silver skin had taken on a grayish tint. "The quantum stabilizer in Reactor Core 3 has suffered a cascade failure, sir. The entire system has locked into a zero-state configuration. In words I can understand. It's dead, sir. Completely, irrevocably, permanently dead." Junior Technician Pip, who was barely out of the academy and still had that annoying enthusiasm that came with youth, raised a tentacle hopefully. "But we have the backup systems, right? The redundancies? We built 17 layers of failsafe specifically for this scenario." Kelton's expression somehow got worse. All 17 failsafes triggered simultaneously and locked themselves into the same failure state. "It's statistically impossible, but here we are." Vex felt his headache intensify. "Time until life support fails? 6 hours, 12 minutes, give or take. And how long to evacuate 50,000 inhabitants? 8 hours. Minimum." The command center fell silent except for the constant beeping of alarms that no one could shut off because, apparently, the alarm system also ran through the dead reactor's control network. Vex had been in military service for 30 cycles, had survived 2 wars and a diplomatic incident involving fermented beverages that no one spoke about anymore. None of that had prepared him for this. "Sir," Pip said quietly, "there is one option we haven't considered. If you're about to suggest we sacrifice a virgin to the reactor gods, I'm demoting you." "No, sir. I mean, we could call in a human engineer." The command center got very quiet. Someone dropped a data pad. Kelton looked physically ill. "A human? Sir, with respect, humans barely discovered faster than light travel 60 years ago. Their engineering principles are chaotic at best and actively dangerous at worst. They build things that shouldn't work, and then they're surprised when those things explode." "I'm aware of humanity's reputation," Vex said dryly. "I'm also aware that we have 6 hours and no other options. Besides, I've heard stories about human engineers. Ridiculous stories, but stories nonetheless." "Urban legends," Kelton muttered. "Spacer tales told to scare academy students. Maybe, but we're out of time and options. Pip, there's a human salvage operator named Marcus Webb working in Sector 7. Send him an emergency contract with triple hazard pay." "Already done, sir," Pip said, manipulating his console with 3 tentacles at once. He responded immediately. "Says he can be here in 45 minutes. "What was his exact response?" Vex asked suspiciously. Pip's skin flushed slightly. "He said, and I quote, 'Yeah, sure, whatever. I was going to take a nap anyway.'" Kelton made a sound like a deflating balloon. "We're all going to die." "Probably," Vex agreed. "But at least we'll die having tried something stupid. It'll make for a better incident report." Marcus Webb arrived exactly 43 minutes later in a salvage shuttle that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and prayers. The vessel docked with a concerning clang that made several station technicians wince, followed by a hiss of hydraulics that sounded like the mechanical equivalent of a death rattle. The airlock cycled open, and out stepped humanity's representative. Vex had seen humans before, but he'd never quite gotten used to how aggressively average they looked. No impressive scales, no adaptive camouflage, no redundant organ systems. Just a bipedal mammal in a stained jumpsuit, carrying a battered metal toolbox in one hand and a thermal coffee container in the other. Marcus Webb had dark circles under his eyes, hair that pointed in 3 different directions, and the expression of someone who'd seen it all and been unimpressed by most of it. "So," Marcus said, taking a sip from his thermos. "Something broke?" Kelton stepped forward holding a data pad like a shield. "Mr. Webb, I've prepared a comprehensive technical briefing on the reactor failure. This 47-page document details every aspect of the cascade failure, including full diagnostic scans, quantum state analysis, and predictive modeling. that proves beyond any doubt that the reactor cannot be repaired without a complete core replacement, which would require specialized components from our homeworld and take approximately 6 weeks to... Marcus yawned. Yeah, I'm not reading that. Kelton blinked. I'm sorry? 47 pages? No thanks. Look, here's how this works. You show me the broken thing, I fix the broken thing, you pay me, I leave. The paperwork just slows everyone down. But the technical specifications are crucial for understanding the... Is it the big important reactor that keeps everyone alive? Well, yes, but... And is it currently not working? That's correct, however. Then it's broken, show me where it is and I'll fix it. Marcus took another sip of coffee. After I find your cafeteria, I'm starving. Vex watched Kelton's face cycle through several interesting colors. Mr. Webb, I don't think you understand the severity of the situation. This is a quantum-aligned fusion reactor with 17 integrated support systems, all of which have failed simultaneously. According to every known principle of quantum mechanics, thermodynamics, and basic physics, this reactor is in an irreversible failure state. The quantum stabilizer has locked at 0, which means it's stuck, Marcus said. That's an incredibly reductive way to describe a complex cascade of quantum-level failures, but yes, essentially it's stuck in a non-operational configuration. Cool. So we unstick it. Kelton looked like he might actually explode. You can't unstick quantum states, they're not jammed doors or frozen hinges. These are fundamental particles locked in specific energy configurations. The mathematics alone proves that reversal is impossible without a complete system rebuild. Marcus studied Kelton for a moment, then turned to Vex. Is he always like this? Usually worse, Vex admitted. Kelton, just show him the reactor. Sir, with respect, this is absurd. We're wasting precious time we could use for evacuation coordination. Humanity barely has fusion technology, and this human certainly doesn't have the advanced training necessary to even comprehend a quantum-aligned system, let alone repair one that our best engineers have declared unsalvageable. Noted. Show him anyway. As they walked through the station corridors toward the reactor level, Marcus seemed more interested in examining the vending machines than the various status displays showing cascading system failures. He stopped at one intersection, studied a wall panel, and frowned. This whole station vibrates wrong, he said. Pip perked up. You can feel the harmonic oscillation variance. That requires incredibly sensitive equipment to detect. Nah, I just mean it feels weird. Like when your tooth is loose but hasn't fallen out yet, everything's just slightly off. Marcus shrugged. Probably fine, though. Kelton made another deflating sound. They finally reached the reactor chamber. Through the observation window, the massive fusion core sat silent and dark, its usual ethereal glow completely absent. The quantum stabilizer, a crystalline structure at the core's center, looked normal to Vex's eyes, but apparently that was the problem. It looked too normal, too stable, locked in a state of perfect inactivity. There it is, Kelton said. The most advanced reactor design in the known galaxy, now serving as a very expensive paperweight because every safety system and redundancy we built to prevent exactly this scenario all failed in the exact same way at the exact same time. Huh, Marcus said. Can I go in there? What? No. The chamber is flooded with residual radiation, the magnetic containment fields are unstable, and the quantum fluctuations could cause cellular degradation at the molecular level. So that's a yes? That's a definitely not. Marcus was already moving toward the chamber entrance, entering an override code into the panel that Vex definitely hadn't given him. How did you... Emergency override is always either 0000 or 1234, Marcus said. You'd be surprised how often people use 1234. The door hissed open. Be back in a minute, maybe 10. Is there a sandwich machine around here? He disappeared into the chamber before anyone could stop him. Kelton turned to Vex. Sir, I formally request that my objection to this entire situation be noted in the official record. Noted. Now let's see what happens. We're all going to die, Kelton repeated. But this time he sounded less certain. Marcus stood in the reactor chamber, coffee thermos in one hand, completely ignoring the warning lights flashing all around him. The quantum stabilizer hung suspended in the center of the chamber, surrounded by dormant magnetic field generators and approximately 24 monitoring systems, all of which insisted everything was broken beyond repair. He set down his coffee and walked a slow circle around the reactor core, occasionally stopping to press his ear against various panels. Behind him, through the observation window, Kelton was frantically scanning for radiation exposure while Pip watched with what appeared to be fascination. "What is he doing?" Kelton muttered, his hands flying over his console. "He's not using any diagnostic equipment. He's not even wearing a radiation badge." "I think he's listening to it," Pip said. "Listening? It's a quantum fusion reactor, not a combustion engine. There's nothing to listen to." In the chamber, Marcus had moved on to touching things. He ran his hand along a coolant pipe, tapped the side of a monitoring station, and then did something that made Kelton actually gasp. He pulled out a wrench from his toolbox and used it to tap various panels, apparently listening to the resulting sound. "He's using a wrench as a diagnostic tool," Kelton said faintly. "A wrench. A crude mechanical leverage device. He's diagnosing a quantum reactor with a wrench." "Sir, maybe there's a method to this?" Pip suggested hopefully. "The method is called insanity, Pip." Marcus suddenly stopped, tilted his head, and then leaned in close to a particular junction point near the stabilizer housing. He sniffed it. Did he just smell the reactor? Kelton's voice had gone up an octave. "I think he did," Vex confirmed, trying very hard not to smile. The intercom crackled. "Hey!" Marcus's voice echoed through the speakers. "Can you guys hear me?" Kelton stabbed the response button. "Yes, Mr. Webb, we can hear you. We can also see you disregarding every safety protocol and diagnostic procedure known to civilized spacefaring species." "Cool, cool. So here's the thing. Your reactor's not broken." Silence. "I'm sorry, what?" Kelton finally managed. "It's not broken." "Well, okay, it's broken, but it's not dead. There's a difference. Mr. Webb, I have 17 different diagnostic reports that conclusively prove—" "Yeah, your diagnostics are all looking at quantum states and energy signatures and whatever. But the actual problem is mechanical." "That's impossible. This is a quantum-aligned system. The mechanical components are purely supportive." Marcus emerged from the chamber, somehow having acquired grease stains on his jumpsuit in the last 5 minutes. "See, that's your problem right there. You guys build everything too perfect. Too many integrated systems, too much automation, too many redundancies that all depend on each other." "Redundancies are supposed to prevent failures," Kelton protested. "Sure, when one thing breaks. But when your redundancies are all networked together and they're all calibrated to respond to each other, then one failure cascades through everything. All your backup systems saw the primary system fail and decided they should fail too. They're basically having a sympathy breakdown." Vex leaned forward. "You've seen this before?" "All the time. I work on garbage scows, salvage haulers, colony ships held together with duct tape and optimism. You know what those ships have in common? They break constantly. And you know what you learn real quick when you're 3 light years from the nearest station in your life support hiccups? You learn that sometimes the best technology is the kind that's too dumb to know it should quit working." Marcus pulled out his data pad, scrolling through something that definitely wasn't Kelton's 47-page report. "Human ships break all the time, but they also keep working way past the point where they should have died, because we build in manual overrides for everything. We assume things will fail. Your species builds things assuming they won't fail, so when they do, everything just gives up at once. That's a gross oversimplification of advanced engineering principles," Kelton said, but he sounded less certain now. "Maybe. But I've spent the last 10 years keeping ships running that your people would have scrapped for parts. You want to know what I think happened?" Marcus gestured at the reactor. "Your quantum stabilizer hit a resonance frequency it wasn't supposed to hit. Nothing dramatic, just a tiny misalignment. Microscopic, really. But because your whole system is built to be perfectly balanced, that tiny wobble cascaded through every connected system. Your backups saw the anomaly, flagged it as critical, and shut themselves down to prevent damage, which triggered more shutdowns, which triggered more, until everything locked itself into failure mode to protect itself." He took another sip of coffee. "It's like a circle of people all watching each other. One person faints, Everyone else thinks something's wrong and faints too, and now you've got a pile of unconscious people even though nothing was actually wrong. Pip's tentacles were waving excitedly. So the reactor isn't damaged, it just thinks it is? More or less. The quantum stabilizer is stuck in a zero state because it locked itself there. All you need to do is give it a reason to try starting again. Kelton had gone from gray to purple. Mr. Webb, the mathematics of quantum state transitions explicitly forbid the kind of casual reset you're describing. You can't just make a quantum system change states without the proper energy input, calibrated to 17 decimal places, delivered through specific harmonic frequencies, synchronized with… Yeah. Or, Marcus said, pulling his wrench out again, we try something else. Like what? Marcus smiled. Something that usually works on stuff that's stuck. Marcus stood in front of the reactor chamber entrance, wrench in hand, while Kelton continued explaining why what he was about to do was impossible. The quantum stabilizer operates on principles of probability and wave function collapse, Kelton said, his voice taking on the desperate quality of someone watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. You cannot simply apply kinetic force to a quantum system and expect meaningful results. The mathematics literally forbids it. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle alone makes your intended action completely meaningless. Marcus said, not listening. He turned to Vex. You might want everyone to step back a bit. How far back? Vex asked, already moving. I don't know, like 3 meters? It's probably fine. Probably, Kelton squeaked. Marcus entered the reactor chamber again, and this time he walked directly to a specific panel near the quantum stabilizer housing. He studied it for exactly 15 seconds, tilting his head like a bird examining a particularly interesting worm. Then he hefted his wrench, tested its weight, and wound up like a baseball player at bat. Mr. Webb, I must strenuously object to… Kelton started, but his words were cut off by the clear, ringing sound of hardened steel impacting advanced alloy plating. Marcus had hit the panel with considerable force. Nothing happened. The alarms continued blaring. The reactor remained dark. The quantum stabilizer sat frozen in its failure state, completely unchanged by the application of what Kelton would later describe in his incident report as barbaric kinetic energy. See? Kelton said, relief flooding his voice. Quantum systems don't respond to percussion. The entire concept is absurd. Now, if we could please focus on evacuation procedures. Marcus calmly walked out of the reactor chamber, closing the door behind him. He picked up his coffee thermos, took a long sip, and then looked at Pip. Try now, he said. I'm sorry. The reactor. Try starting it now. Kelton laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Mr. Webb, I have been patient with your unorthodox methods because Commander Vex ordered me to be, but this has gone beyond… Pip, Vex interrupted. Try it. The young technician's tentacles trembled slightly as he initialized the startup sequence. Everyone knew what would happen. The reactor would refuse to start, just as it had refused the 17 previous attempts. The quantum stabilizer would remain locked in its zero state, and they would be exactly where they started. Except now they'd wasted precious evacuation time watching a human hit things with a wrench. The reactor hummed to life. For a moment, nobody moved. The sound was impossible. The quantum stabilizer was glowing, its crystalline structure cycling through the proper energy states. The magnetic containment fields were reinitializing. The fusion reaction was stabilizing, the reactor was running. What? Kelton said. It wasn't a question. He wasn't capable of questions. His entire understanding of physics had just been assaulted by a wrench. Pip was staring at his console. Sir, the reactor is operating at 97% efficiency. The quantum stabilizer has resumed normal harmonic oscillation. All 17 backup systems are coming back online. Life support is restoring throughout the station. That's impossible, Kelton whispered. And yet, Marcus said, draining his coffee, here we are. Vex studied the human for a long moment. Explain, and I mean actually explain, not just tell me it was stuck. Marcus shrugged. The quantum stabilizer wasn't dead, it was locked. All your safety systems had triggered to prevent damage, which meant the system couldn't receive the normal startup signals. Everything was waiting for everything else to confirm it was safe to proceed, which couldn't happen because everything had shut itself down. But hitting it, Kelton started, caused a momentary disruption in the magnetic containment field, which interrupted the feedback loop that was keeping everything in failure mode. The system had a split second where nothing was telling it to stay shut down, so the automated startup procedures kicked in before the safety systems could object again. Marcus pulled a protein bar from his pocket and unwrapped it. It's like when your computer freezes and you have to force restart it. Sometimes you need to interrupt the error state to get things moving again. That's not how quantum mechanics works, Kelton said weakly. Maybe not in your textbooks, but it worked, didn't it? Vex watched the reactor displays, all showing green across the board. What else is wrong with my station, Mr. Webb? Oh, tons of stuff. That vibration I mentioned? You've got a coolant pump on Deck 7 that's about 2 weeks from seizing completely. Your artificial gravity generators have a harmonic imbalance that's gonna cause serious problems in about 6 months. And whoever installed your communication array was drunk, because that thing is held together with hope and improper cable routing. And you can fix these things? Marcus bit into his protein bar. Probably. Most of it just needs someone to actually look at it instead of running diagnostics that tell you everything is fine until suddenly it's not. Kelton had collapsed into a chair, staring at his console like it had personally betrayed him. This violates everything I learned at the academy. Yeah, Marcus agreed. That's kind of the point. Your academy teaches you to build things that don't break. I learned to keep things running after they should have died. Different philosophies. Pip was pulling up maintenance reports, his tentacles moving faster than Vex had ever seen. Mr. Webb, if you have time, we have 347 systems flagged for eventual maintenance. Standard protocol calls for a shipyard inspection in 7 months, but if you could... Pip, Marcus interrupted gently. I charge by the hour and I don't work cheap. But sure, send me the list. I'll take a look at the stuff that's actually important. He turned to Vex. Your coolant pump first. That's going to kill someone if it fails while people are in that section. How can you tell? Because I worked on a colony ship where the coolant pump failed while someone was in that section. It was not pretty. Trust me, fix the pump. Vex nodded slowly. The human was strange. His methods were unorthodox, and he'd apparently fixed an irreparable reactor by hitting it with a wrench. But the station was running again. His people were safe, and Kelton looked like his entire worldview had been shattered. All things considered, it was turning out to be a good day. 3 hours later, Vex stood in conference room 3, watching Marcus explain percussive maintenance to a room full of increasingly distressed engineers. Kelton sat in the corner, having progressed through denial and anger and now residing somewhere in the vicinity of existential crisis. So, Marcus said, pointing at a holographic display of the station's systems, the problem with advanced engineering is that you optimize everything until you've optimized out all the flexibility. Your systems are so perfectly calibrated that they can't handle anything unexpected. A Threnian engineer raised a hesitant hand. But optimization prevents failures. If systems are calibrated to exact specifications, they should function more reliably. Should, yeah, in theory. But reality doesn't care about theory. Marcus pulled up a schematic of a coolant junction. This thing right here, it's currently operating at 99.3% efficiency. Your monitoring system says it's perfect, but listen to this. He played an audio file. To Vex's ears, it sounded like normal equipment operation. A low hum, some minor vibrations, nothing unusual. Hear that resonance at the 7-second mark? Marcus asked. Everyone shook their heads. Exactly. Your equipment doesn't hear it either. But that's a bearing that's starting to wear unevenly. In about 2 weeks, it's going to seize, the coolant flow is going to drop, and you'll have a cascade failure in this entire section. Your diagnostics won't catch it until it's already failing, because the bearing is still within acceptable tolerances. It's not broken enough to trigger alarms, but it's definitely broken enough to cause problems. He switched to another schematic. Human engineering is different. We assume things will break, so we build in ways to work around the failures. Manual overrides everywhere. Systems that can limp along even when half the components are dead. We don't optimize for perfection, we optimize for survival. Pip raised a tentacle. But surely that results in less efficient systems. Absolutely. Human ships are inefficient as hell. We waste energy, we have redundancies, we overbuild everything because we know it's gonna break and we need it to keep working anyway. Marcus grinned. But when something does break, we can fix it with a wrench and some creative cursing. Your ships? One critical failure and you're calling for a tow truck. Kelton finally spoke up, his voice hollow. Are you suggesting that human engineering is superior to Galactic Union standards? Nah, not superior. Just different. Your stuff works great 99% of the time. But that 1%? That's when you need someone who knows how to hit things in just the right way. For the next hour, Marcus walked the engineering team through station systems identifying problems that didn't register on any diagnostic scan. He found coolant leaks by checking for temperature variations too subtle for sensors to catch. He identified structural stress by examining wear patterns on access panels. He diagnosed a potentially catastrophic power coupling issue by noticing a discoloration on a component that every test said was functioning perfectly. And in every case, his solution was some variation of percussive maintenance, kinetic recalibration, or what he cheerfully called the technical tap. He fixed the Deck 7 coolant pump by hitting it 3 times with progressively larger wrenches, explaining that the bearing had locked up just enough to create friction, but not enough to trigger alarms. The impacts had broken the micro-seizure, and the pump was now running smoothly. The artificial gravity generator required him to kick a specific panel while Pip cycled the power. Kinetic energy transfer, Marcus explained to the horrified engineers. Sometimes you gotta physically jostle things back into alignment. The communication array turned out to have a loose connection that no diagnostic could find, because the connection was only loose when specific frequencies were transmitted. Marcus's solution was to open the access panel, stare at the components for approximately 30 seconds, and then blow on a particular circuit board. Did you just blow on it? Kelton asked, his voice barely a whisper. Yep, corrosion on the contacts. Brief application of moisture and CO2 breaks down the oxidation layer just enough for contact to restore. It's temporary. You'll need to actually clean and reseal that whole array, but it'll work for now. It did work. Everything Marcus touched worked. Nothing about his methods made sense according to proper engineering principles, but the results were undeniable. The station was running better than it had in months, and all it had taken was a human with a wrench and an apparent disregard for the laws of physics. As the meeting finally wrapped up, Vex pulled Marcus aside. You know, the Galactic Engineering Council is going to want a full report on your methods. Marcus laughed. Good luck with that. I don't even know how I know half this stuff. You just work on enough broken systems and you develop a feel for it. It's like asking a musician to explain how they know when a note is off key. They just know. The council isn't going to accept "I just know" as an engineering principle. Then they can stay confused. Look, Commander, your people build amazing things. Stuff that humans won't be able to match for another century at least. But you've been building things that work for so long that you've forgotten how to keep things working when they don't want to. That's where humans come in. So humanity's contribution to the galaxy is hitting things until they work? Hey, it's not much, but it's honest work. Marcus checked his datapad. Speaking of which, I've got another salvage job lined up in the outer reaches. Derelict colony ship that's been floating dead for 6 months. Want to bet I can get it running in under a day? I wouldn't take that bet. Smart man. Marcus hefted his toolbox. Payment should be in my account. Triple hazard pay, as agreed, already processed. And Mr. Webb, thank you for saving my station. Marcus nodded, already heading for the airlock. Anytime, Commander. Well, not actually anytime. I charge extra for rush jobs, but you know what I mean. He was almost to his ship when Pip caught up with him, all tentacles waving excitedly. Mr. Webb, I was wondering if I could ask you something. Sure, kid. What's up? Could I come with you on your next job? I want to learn your methods. Marcus studied the young alien for a moment. It's not pretty work. Lots of dangerous situations, questionable safety standards, and you'll probably end up covered in grease and coolant more often than not. I don't care, I need to learn this. Chief Kelton is a brilliant engineer, but today I watched you fix things he said were impossible to fix. I want to understand how. Marcus grinned. All right, kid. But fair warning, the first rule of human engineering is that there's no such thing as a permanent fix. Everything breaks eventually. The trick is keeping it running long enough that it becomes someone else's problem. I can accept that. Then grab your stuff. We leave in 20 minutes. 2 weeks later, in a conference room 17 light-years away, Chief Engineer Kelton stood before the Galactic Engineering Council preparing to deliver what would either be the most important presentation of his career or the one that got him committed to a psychiatric facility. The council chamber was filled with the galaxy's most respected engineers, representing species that had been building starships when humanity was still figuring out the wheel. They sat in their assigned sections, multiple species all united by their devotion to proper engineering principles and their skepticism of whatever nonsense was about to waste their time. Honored council members, Kelton began, his voice steadier than he felt. I am here to present findings on human percussive maintenance theory, an engineering approach that contradicts several fundamental principles we consider absolute, yet produces undeniable results. A Corthan engineer in the front row made a dismissive gesture. We've all heard the stories, Kelton. Humans hitting things until they work. It's chance, coincidence, or fabrication. We have better things to discuss. That's what I thought too, Kelton admitted, until I watched a human engineer restart a reactor that 17 of our best technicians had declared permanently dead. He fixed it by hitting it with a primitive tool called a wrench. The chamber erupted in laughter. Kelton waited for it to die down, then displayed the data. Station logs showing the reactor failure, diagnostic reports confirming the quantum stabilizer was locked in an irreversible zero state, 17 backup systems all registering critical failure, mathematical models proving that recovery was impossible, and then the logs from after Marcus Webb's intervention, the reactor operating at 97% efficiency. All systems restored, 50,000 lives saved. The laughter stopped. As you can see, the humans' method was successful. But more importantly, I've spent the last 2 weeks analyzing why it was successful. Kelton pulled up a complex theoretical framework. Human engineering operates on a principle they call good enough. They don't optimize for perfection. They optimize for continued functionality in imperfect conditions. This creates systems that are inefficient but robust. He showed more data. Failure rates for human-built equipment versus Galactic Union standards. Human systems failed more often, but catastrophic failures were rare. Union systems rarely had minor failures, but when they did fail, they failed completely. The human approach to engineering incorporates what they call percussive maintenance, the application of kinetic energy to disrupt locked mechanical or electronic states, allowing systems to reset into operational configurations. It's crude, it's imprecise, and according to our understanding of optimal design, it shouldn't work. Kelton displayed footage of Marcus Webb fixing various station systems, hitting a coolant pump, kicking a gravity generator, blowing on a circuit board. But it does work. Consistently. The human engineer identified and resolved 47 critical issues on our station, none of which appeared on diagnostic scans, using methods that would result in immediate academy expulsion if attempted by one of our students. A Threnian counselor leaned forward. You're suggesting we incorporate these barbaric techniques into our engineering curriculum? I'm suggesting that humanity has discovered something we've forgotten. We've become so focused on preventing failures that we've lost the ability to recover from them. Humans assume everything will break, so they build systems that can keep functioning despite failures. And when something does break beyond normal operation, they have intuitive methods for coaxing it back to life. Another counselor spoke up. This is absurd. You're asking us to believe that hitting equipment is a valid engineering technique? I'm asking you to examine the evidence. Kelton gestured to the data. Since implementing the humans' recommendations, Prosperity Hub has seen a 43% reduction in critical system failures and a 67% improvement in mean time between maintenance requirements. Our efficiency is down by 2%, but our reliability is up by 34%. Is that not worth considering? The chamber fell silent. The head counselor, an elderly Corthan who'd been designing starships for longer than Kelton had been alive, finally spoke. You've tested these methods? Extensively, under controlled conditions with proper safety protocols, and always with a human consultant present, to ensure correct application of percussive techniques. And the results are reproducible? Yes, counselor. Which is perhaps the most disturbing part. The human methods work consistently, across multiple system types, on equipment from different manufacturers. It shouldn't work according to our understanding, but it does. The head counselor was quiet for a long moment. I propose we open a formal investigation into human engineering practices, not to adopt them wholesale, but to understand why they're effective. If humanity has discovered principles we've overlooked, we'd be fools to ignore them out of pride. Seconded, another counselor said. Motion carries. Kelton, continue your research. And someone get me a human engineer. I want to see this for myself. 3 weeks after that, the galactic job market saw an unprecedented shift. Human engineers, previously dismissed as barely competent, were suddenly the most sought-after troubleshooters in known space. Contracts poured in from across the galaxy, all requesting the same thing: someone who could fix the unfixable, preferably with a wrench and an attitude problem. Marcus Webb was on a derelict colony ship in the outer reaches when his communicator started going insane with job offers. He was currently teaching Pip the fine art of percussive maintenance, which mostly involved hitting things in progressively harder until something changed. Like this? Pip asked, gently tapping a dead control panel with a borrowed wrench. Harder. You gotta mean it. The equipment can sense fear. Equipment cannot sense fear, Mr. Webb. That's scientifically impossible. And yet here we are, fixing a ship that's been dead for 6 months. Science is weird. Hit it harder. Pip hit it harder. The control panel flickered to life. See? It works. I don't understand why it works, but it works. That's the spirit, kid. Understanding is overrated. Results are what matter. Marcus's communicator buzzed for the 17th time in an hour. He glanced at it, saw another 6-figure contract offer, and tossed it back in his toolbox. You seeing this? Apparently every station in the sector wants a human engineer now. You've become famous, Pip said, working on another panel. Chief Kelton's presentation to the Engineering Council went viral across the galactic net. There are entire forums dedicated to analyzing your methods. That sounds awful. They're calling you the human who fixed the unfixable. That sounds worse. Marcus opened his thermos, discovered it was empty, and sighed. You know what the problem with fame is, Pip? What? Expectations. Right now, I'm just a guy who fixes things. Give it a few months and everyone's gonna expect miracles. Some stuff can't be fixed no matter how hard you hit it. But most things can? Most things, yeah. Engineering isn't magic, it's just applied stubbornness and a willingness to try stupid things when smart things don't work. Marcus studied the colony ship's main reactor, which looked like it had given up on life sometime during the previous administration. Speaking of which, this reactor is definitely dead. Can you fix it? Probably. But it's going to take more than hitting it. This thing needs a full rebuild, new quantum coils, replacement coolant lines, and about 6 weeks of work that I don't want to do. So what do? Marcus grinned. We get it running just enough to limp to a proper shipyard, collect our salvage fee, and let someone else deal with the permanent repairs. Remember, kid, good enough is good enough. That seems ethically questionable. Welcome to salvage work. Now hand me that bigger wrench. They worked in companionable silence for a while, making steady progress on systems that had been declared hopeless. Marcus had to admit Pip was a fast learner. The kid had gone from horrified by percussive maintenance to enthusiastically hitting things with only moderate guidance. Mr. Webb, Pip said eventually, can I ask you something? Sure. Why do you do this? You could charge triple what you're charging. You could be selective about jobs, work for the most prestigious clients. Instead, you're on a derelict ship in the middle of nowhere, fixing things that barely matter. Marcus paused, considering the question. You know what the difference is between your people and mine? Superior technology, longer lifespan, more advanced civilization, better safety protocols. Besides that, the difference is that your people build things that are supposed to last forever. Human things? We build them knowing they're gonna break. We're used to stuff falling apart. Hell, we expect it. So when I fix something that everyone else gave up on, that means something to me. It means that thing gets to keep existing a little longer. Maybe that's dumb, but I like keeping stuff running. That's not dumb, Pip said quietly. Yeah, well, don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation as a cynical jerk to maintain. Marcus's communicator buzzed again. He pulled it out, ready to ignore another contract offer, then stopped. Huh. What is it? Military contract. Dreadnought-class warship, experimental reactor, complete system failure during shakedown cruise. They're dead in space, no power, no life support backup, and they need someone there in 6 hours. He showed Pip the offered payment. They're offering stupid money. Are you going to take it? Marcus looked at the colony ship reactor, then at his communicator, then back at Pip. Kid, you ever work on a military vessel? No, sir. Neither have I, but I've heard the stories. Everything's classified. Every officer thinks they're the most important person in the room, and they've got regulations for their regulations. He grinned. Sounds awful. Let's do it. Really? Yeah. Figure we can get this colony ship limping in another hour. That gives us time to get to the dreadnought, fix their problem, collect an obscene amount of money, and probably get court-martialed for violating some military protocol. Should be fun. They worked faster, Marcus talking Pip through the process of temporary repairs, the kind of jury-rigged solutions that would horrify Kelton, but would keep the ship running long enough to matter. By the time they'd coaxed the colony ship's reactor into a sullen, resentful operational state, Marcus's communicator showed they had exactly 5 hours and 37 minutes to reach the dreadnought. We're not going to make it, Pip said, checking the math. Not with normal acceleration, no, but this salvage ship has some modifications that aren't exactly regulation approved. Marcus headed for the cockpit. Strap in, kid. This is going to be educational. The trip to the dreadnought took 4 hours and 42 minutes, during which Pip learned several new phrases that he was reasonably sure weren't appropriate for polite company. They arrived to find the military vessel dead in space, a massive piece of engineering perfection that had apparently forgotten how to work. Marcus docked with his usual grace, which meant a concerning amount of scraping sounds and at least one alarm that they both ignored. The airlock opened to reveal 3 military officers, all looking extremely unhappy. You're the human engineer? The lead officer asked. She was a Corthan with the kind of expression that suggested she'd eaten something unpleasant and was being forced to smile about it. That's me, Marcus Webb, freelance engineer and professional pain in the ass. This is my associate, Pip. Admiral Torvin, this is my ship and it's completely dead. Our chief engineer says the reactor is in an irreversible failure state. Yeah, I've heard that before. Let me guess. Quantum stabilizer locked at 0, all backup systems cascaded into failure mode. Diagnostics say it's impossible to fix. Admiral Torvin's expression suggested she was regretting every decision that had led to this moment. That's correct. Cool. Show me the reactor and I'll have you running in about 20 minutes. Our best engineers have been working on this for 6 hours. Your best engineers probably have fancy degrees and read instruction manuals. I fix garbage scows for a living. Different skill sets. Marcus hefted his toolbox. The reactor? They walked through a ship that was dark, cold, and full of very nervous military personnel. Marcus noticed that everything was spotlessly clean, perfectly organized, and completely non-functional. It was like walking through a museum of things that used to work. The reactor room was identical to every other advanced reactor room Marcus had seen. Lots of impressive-looking equipment, multiple monitoring stations, and one very dead quantum stabilizer sitting in the middle of it all. Yep, Marcus said. I can fix this. How? Torvin demanded. Same way I fixed the last 3. Gonna hit it with a wrench. Absolutely not. This is experimental military hardware worth more than your entire salvage operation. You are not hitting it with primitive tools. Marcus shrugged. Your choice. You can stay dead in space and wait for a tow, which will take about 3 days and cost way more than you're paying me. Or you can let me do my job, and you'll be running before your crew finishes their dinner break. Torvin looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Marcus's expression must have convinced her. Fine. But if you damage anything... Yeah, I'll be in so much trouble. Heard it before. Marcus entered the reactor chamber, Pip following nervously behind him. Okay, kid, watch and learn. This is going to be textbook percussive maintenance. He walked around the reactor once, listening, touched a few panels, nodded to himself. Then he pulled out his wrench, found the exact right spot, and hit it with precisely calculated force. Nothing happened. Marcus calmly turned to the observation window, where Torvin and her officers were watching. He locked eyes with the Admiral and said the words that had become his trademark across the galaxy. Try now. An engineering officer initiated the startup sequence, clearly expecting nothing. The reactor hummed to life, its quantum stabilizers cycling through proper energy states, magnetic containment fields stabilizing, fusion reactions spreading through the core like a slow-motion sunrise. The Dreadnought's lights came back on. Admiral Torvin stared at her suddenly functional ship, then at Marcus, then back at her ship. How did you? Trade secret. But if your engineers want to prevent this from happening again, tell them to add more manual overrides and stop trusting automated safety systems to fix themselves. That's your problem right there. Too much automation, not enough ability to improvise. That contradicts every military engineering standard. Yeah, well, your military engineering standards left you dead in space. My wrench got you running again. Maybe rethink those standards. Marcus collected his toolbox. Payment should be in my account. Nice doing business with you. Wait, Torvin said. That's it? You're not going to file a report, explain your methodology, provide documentation? Nope. I fixed your ship. That's what you paid me for. Everything else is extra. Marcus headed for the airlock, then paused. Oh, and Admiral? You've got a coolant manifold on your port side that sounds wrong. Get that checked out before it becomes a problem. Trust me on this one. They were back in his salvage ship within 10 minutes, undocking before anyone could stop them with paperwork or questions or requests for formal documentation. Mr. Webb, Pip said as they pulled away from the Dreadnought, do you think they'll actually take your advice about the manual overrides? Probably not. Military types don't like being told their way is wrong. But maybe one or two of their engineers will think about it, and maybe that'll be enough. Marcus checked his account balance, confirmed the obscene payment had been transferred, and smiled. Besides, if they don't learn, they'll just call me again next time something breaks. His communicator started buzzing with new contract offers. A station in Sector 9, 2 colony ships in the outer reaches, a passenger liner with mysterious engine trouble, a research facility with life support issues, and at least 6 messages from the Galactic Engineering Council, requesting his presence for formal demonstrations of human maintenance techniques. You're in demand, Pip observed. Yeah, it's weird. Marcus scrolled through the offers. 6 months ago, I was scraping by on salvage work and station repairs. Now everyone wants a human engineer. It's like the galaxy suddenly remembered that sometimes you need someone who knows how to hit things until they work. Are you going to accept all these contracts? Hell no. Half of them are probably easy fixes that any decent engineer could handle. I'm going to stick with the impossible stuff. The reactors that can't be fixed, the ships that should be dead, the problems that make smart people give up. He grinned. That's where the fun is. And the money. And the money, yeah. Not gonna lie, kid. This beats the hell out of salvaging derelict cargo haulers. Marcus's communicator buzzed one more time. He glanced at the message, then started laughing. What? Pip asked. Message from Chief Engineer Kelton. Says he wants me to come back to Prosperity Hub and teach a course on percussive maintenance to his engineering staff. Apparently, it's now part of their official training curriculum. Are you going to do it? Marcus thought about it for a moment, imagining himself trying to teach a room full of proper engineers to hit things correctly, then shook his head. Nah. Some things you can't teach in a classroom. You gotta learn by doing, preferably on equipment that's already broken so you can't make it worse. Like I'm doing? Exactly like you're doing. You're gonna be great at this, kid. You've got the right attitude. You're not afraid to try stupid things. Thank you, I think. It's definitely a compliment. Marcus set a course for the nearest station with a decent cafeteria. Now come on, I'm starving, and I need to find somewhere that serves actual coffee, not that synthetic crap the colony ship had in storage. As they flew through the vastness of space, Pip noticed Marcus was humming something under his breath. What's that song? Pip asked. Old human tune, something about turning things off and on again. Seems appropriate. Marcus glanced at all the contract offers, still flooding his communicator. You know what the funny thing is, Pip? What? Everyone's treating this like I discovered some revolutionary new engineering technique. But I didn't discover anything. Humans have been fixing things by hitting them for thousands of years. We just never thought to write it down and call it a theory. He grinned. Leave it to us to accidentally stumble into being galactic engineering consultants by doing the exact same thing we've always done. Hitting things until they work? Hitting things until they work, Marcus confirmed. It's not elegant, it's not sophisticated, and it definitely doesn't look good on paper. But you know what? It works. And sometimes working is all that matters. His communicator buzzed again. Another impossible problem. Another dead reactor. Another crisis that needed someone dumb enough to try the obvious solution. Marcus Webb smiled, finished his terrible synthetic coffee, and set course for the next disaster. Because in a galaxy full of things built to last forever, sometimes you needed someone who knew how to keep them running, when forever turned out to be shorter than expected. And if that someone happened to be a human with a wrench and a complete disregard for proper engineering protocols, well, that was just humanity's contribution to the stars.